I've been competing out of a Falcon Bass Boat for the last 7 years. Maybe this 26 will be the 8th year. And in this video, I want to tell you everything that you need to know about the company Falcon. Um, Also, I want to tell you a little bit about how I arrived there because I think that gives you context. In this video, this is not going to be, if you're looking for me to tell you why Falcon is better than every other bass boat that exists, that's not what you're going to get in this video. You'll probably have to go somewhere else. I'm literally just going to tell you a couple facts being with the company for 8 years now that you may find valuable or help you make a decision in your next boat buy. That's literally all it is. One thing that I like about Falcon is every boat has these little quirks and little things that you can fix. And I've noticed with a lot of boat companies, they make these large sweeping changes from year to year or every 3 or 4 years. One thing that I've respected about Falcon in the 8 years that I've been there, or going into this 8th season, very, very minimalistic details that have changed every year, or sometimes maybe even skip a year. But just little bitty things, no sweeping changes. So, for example, if you bought, I think the first year of Falcon is it's 2014 to 2015. If you bought a 2014 to 2015 Falcon, to my 26 model that I have right here, there's not that many changes, but there are changes. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. How I arrived at running the Falcon. So I used to run Rangers. I had not my first boat, but my second boat was a Ranger. And I ran Rangers all the way up into my second season fishing professionally. The reason that I switched from Ranger to Falcon is I didn't have any problem with my boats at Ranger. Actually, I like the boat a lot. The problem was logistics in getting a boat. In 2017, I think it was, or 2018, yeah, in 2017, I had to fish the first 3 tournaments of the FLW Tour out of my dad's boat because I couldn't get a boat. They wouldn't tell me when I was going to get a boat. And at that point, I was early on in my fishing journey and I need a boat. I would guide sometime on the side. I was fishing tournaments and I had a lot invested in entry fees, and getting the cold shoulder on not knowing when I was going to get a boat, it was a big problem for me. So I knew the next season, 2018 season, I was like, I got to do something different because I can't wait. I can't be held in limbo on when I'm going to get a boat when you have my money. So I heard of a company, Falcon, that was in South Carolina. I didn't know of any other bass boat company that I could just go and drive my truck to. And at the time, nobody had a Falcon. In 2018, 2017, nobody had a Falcon. Only a few people had even heard of the boat company. But Anthony Gagliardi was the only person I know that had one. I think John Hunter. And I remember I got in Anthony Gagliardi's boat at Gunnersville in 2017, and I was like, dude, I really like this thing a lot. It was really big. It was a company here in South Carolina. I was super interested. I drove down to the factory when at the fall. It was like this time of the year in 2017. I put an order in. I met Steven at 10. I put an order in the next day after I visited, and I've been there ever since. So that's how I arrived at Falcon. I got my boat. I put an order in. I think they sprayed it the next week. And I had my boat within 2 or 3 weeks. We were waiting on my motor. We wasn't waiting on the boat. We were just waiting on my motor to get there. My first Falcon, if you guys have followed me for a long time, you've probably seen it. My first Falcon was a F205. My first one actually had a Mercury Verado on it, a 250 Pro 4-stroke Mercury Verado. Still to this day, probably my favorite of all the ones that I've owned so far, which I think this one is the 8th one. But what I really wanted to use this video for is to show you some just little minor changes that they've changed over the years that have made the boat a lot better than what they used to be, in my opinion. Let's talk about some aesthetics that Falcon has changed over the last few years. The first few Falcons, just aesthetic-wise, you may just notice a Falcon logo right here in the center of the boat. One thing that they changed, I think it was 2021, I want to say, they added this Falcon bird logo. That was one of the aesthetic changes that you'll notice in some of the model changes. From 2019, I want to say 2020 and earlier, it's just going to have a Falcon logo here. And then 2021 to current is going to have the Falcon head, and then you'll have the Falcon emblem right here along the stern on the starboard. And what is the other fancy word for boat? Starboard and whatever else you call it. So over the years, Falcon made quite a few layout improvements, and I'm going to show you what those are. In 2020, I got the first Predator. I think they're kind of available to the public and officially branded as Predator hulls in 2021. But one of the things they changed was the deck. So it's a very subtle change, but it made a huge difference. So 2019 and earlier, there was a lot more fiberglass here in the nose. And what they did was push the deck as far as they could into the bow of the boat to give you more places to stand. It allowed you to mount your trolling motor a little differently. I remember on my first couple of Falcons, my trolling motor head would lay on the glass of the boat, and sometimes it would cause a few issues. But when they push that forward, it allows you to pivot your trolling motor a little bit differently. You had more places to stand. The way that you mounted your electronics and your foot pedal was all pushed forward. And the other thing that changed was, if you can get more forward on your boat, you can make better casts, because your trolling motor, the further your trolling motor is away from you, the harder it is to make roll casts without hitting your trolling motor. So that changed a lot of the contact points up here up front. One of the other things they just changed just for this year was the switch panel. It's just an updated switch panel. It's not anything that's grossly different, but this is definitely different from the earlier models. It just looks a little bit cleaner and neater than the ones we had before. Now, I know a lot of people don't like the rocker panel switches. I'm here to tell you it's the best thing that you could have on a bass boat, and here's why. I said I wasn't going to tell you why it's better than any other boat, but this is one of the things that really is better than any other boat. A lot of newer bass boats have these really fancy, psychedelic, LED lit switch panels. They look so cool. They look so high end. And everybody's like, well, I guess they should be high end. They're $100,000 rigs and $80,000 rigs and $150,000 rigs. I hear you, Gerald. But here's the problem with that. When you have those high end LED screens, anytime you have a problem, you lose your entire switch panel. So let's just say a switch goes out for my horn of all things. Well, on those really fancy LED screens, you might lose the entire panel. Now you can't use your bilge pump. Now you can't use your aerators. Now you can't do anything on that switch panel. Now you lose your fish. You can't crank up your boat. Push button start looks so cool. It's so clean. It's so urban. It's not urbanized. It's so modern. But if you lose that switch, you can't start the boat. Well, here's the thing. We still got the old-fashioned key. It's standalone. Every switch is its own compartment. If my aerator switch goes out, it doesn't kill everything else. Everything is compartmentalized until its own little switch. I don't have any problems. And listen, even if I do have problems, I go to O'Reilly's, pick up a $9 switch and keep rocking on. I don't have to call my dealer and get a $1,200 switch panel and have him install it and all the things. It's better, y'all. I don't care what nobody says. I said I wasn't gonna say how Falcon was better than every other boat. Maybe the boat ain't better than every other boat, but that right there it makes a lot of sense. That's kind of why I like the company. Here's another thing. Another hull improvement that they changed, or I say layout improvement, not a hull improvement. Layout improvement is the EVA in the flooring, in the bottom of the floor. I think that makes sense because this is the wettest part of the boat, and you can even see it, like I got stuff all over, like it, you know, it's just the wettest, nastiest part of the boat. So having that EVA flooring in the very bottom of the boat makes sense because it'll dry out faster. I hate when it's wet down there, and it's the grimiest section of the boat. Personally, my personal opinion, I don't really like EVA flooring anywhere else in the boat, on the deck or anything like that. I know a lot of guys are doing that now. I do believe carpet is far superior on the deck because it's just tackier. The EVA is not the deal when it's cold. If you're fishing cold weather, when it gets ice on it, it's slick. So I don't like it on the deck. I have it on my bay boat, so I have experience with it. I prefer carpeting in my bass boat. Protects my reels better too. But that's just a personal opinion. In 2020, we got a new console, and I think this one is better. It looks a little bit different. If you have one of the earlier Falcons, it's more round here in the front, but they kind of just made it look a little bit more modern than the ones they had I want to say 2019 and earlier. They just have a little bit different look to them. One thing that they did with the console is they also made it where you have more leg room by beveling in. Let me see if I can show you. Since my graphs are on, it's a little hard to tell you, but the console on early models were just straight flat, 90 degrees, just straight in. What they did on these consoles, I think they reduce how far it comes towards you by just an inch or two. And then they also beveled it in towards the steering wheel. And that just created more leg room. So you've got more, it's not hitting your knees as much. That was a huge improvement. It's felt way more comfortable in here at the cockpit. It gave us more room. And then we were also able to mount bigger graphs here in the console. If you like a flush mount, I think you can go up to like a 12-inch. Don't quote me on that, but I know you can get at least a 12-inch in there, maybe a 16, but I'm not sure. But the units kept getting bigger and they adjusted the console for that. It's much easier to mount on this particular console than it is the previous model, and it gives you a lot more leg room. So it's just a simple thing that they changed. I think it was 2020 or 2021 to current that made this area a lot more comfortable. In a boat, I don't care what manufacturer, what brand, you fight moisture all the time. And one of the things that they improved tremendously was waterproofing, keeping moisture out of our compartments. In our first ones, in the first Falcon, the F205, we had a different coin box. It was like a black poly coin box. And it was like, you might as well just take a gallon of water and just pour it in there. After, I think it was 2019 and earlier, we got the fiberglass box, and this one is waterproof. You don't have any problems with getting any water in there. I can put my cell phone or whatever I need to put in there. It's good, it's safe. I don't have to worry about getting water. But I will say, early on, those first Falcons, you could put you a couple of 2 or 3 pound bass in this mug, how much water it leaked. But they listened to us and they improved this. They improved it. It's not a black eye to the company. They had something, we didn't get it right, and then we got it right. The other thing we improved was fiberglass compartments in the rod lockers. So the first few Falcons, when you would open the rod lockers, it was just the bottom of the boat with some carpet on it. It wasn't these actual dedicated fiberglass lockers. So we all know in these drains, like if you had rain, the water goes down into the bottom of the boat, the bilge of the boat. And if this is just the bilge of the boat, you'd get condensation going back up to your rods and reels. And it was just hard to get this to ever dry out. So they came up with these dedicated fiberglass compartments, especially on the Predator hulls. And now all of this stuff is more waterproof. You don't have to worry about condensation coming up from the bilge. It was just an improvement on the prior models that they just made the boat better. It's just a very simple thing that they changed a little bit at a time. I appreciated those small changes. This is the 2026 model. This is an area that I thought was very simple that they improved on, is they put some of that EVA material right here at the engine. This was always a problem. Your rigging tube would always rub against the fiberglass. And when it did that, it would scar up your fiberglass back here at the back, and it would always look bad when you go to sell the boat after a year. They put just a little bit of EVA material right here that keeps your rigging tube from scratching the fiberglass. Very small thing, but it makes a difference. It makes the boat, keeps it looking nice and fresh when you go to sell it. One thing that a lot of people wonder about is what's the difference between a Predator hull and a 205, which is both the 20-foot models, or what's the difference between an F21 Predator and the 215? So the short answer is nothing's different with the hull. It's all trimmings. So let me explain. You know how you can go to the Ford dealership and you can buy a Ford King Ranch or you can buy a Ford XLT. They're both the same frames. They're both the same truck, same engine, but it's all trimmings. It's all the leather seats, all the little things on the inside. Maybe you get a reverse camera that's a little bit bigger, all the trimmings. The bumpers look a little bit different. That's the difference between a 205 and the F20 Predator. There's no differences in the hulls. I think that should be everything that has changed with Falcon boats over the last 7 to 8 years in my experience. If you got any other questions about the boat, I do a boat build vlog every single year. So there's at least 8 years worth of boat build vlogs. And we're not talking about one videos. I've done performance videos. I've talked about how good the boat rides. I've taken it out in rough water and used the boat. We've done every single thing that you could think about concerning that boat right there. There's a video on this channel about it. Just type in my name, Brian Latimer, how fast will a Falcon F20 Predator go? I've tried the F18 Predator. I've drove the 195. I've drove every single model they have, and I have a video showcasing that boat. So if you have any questions, this is a good resource for you to find out all the information that you need to know about Falcon boats.